On October 29th, 1929, David McReynolds was born to nurse Elizabeth Grace and Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Charles McReynolds. Growing up as a fundamentalist Baptist, he was influenced to join the Prohibition Party when he reached the age of 18. However, when he was starting to interact with the rest of their youth faction, they all started to become more drawn to the ideas of socialism and pacifism, heading over to Europe to attend a pacifist political conference. While there, McReynolds had discovered that he was gay. By 1951, the Prohibitionists decided to expel their youth faction due to their socialist leanings, McReynolds immediately joining the Socialist Party of America. What made McReynolds a very interesting figure was the fact that he was doing all of this massive political action while attending UCLA, even being arrested for refusing to serve in Korea, graduating in the year 1953. The next year, he would end up becoming part of the Socialist Party's National Committee, being influential in bringing Max Chapman into the Socialist Party. He would end up becoming more politically active during the 60s, joining the editorial board of Liberation and joining the staff of the Wars Resistor League. In 1965, McReynolds joined 4 men in publicly burning their draft cards, one of the earliest public demonstrations of that after it became a felony. In 1968, McReynolds joined the Writers and Editors War Tax Protest Pledge, refusing to pay taxes in protest of the Vietnam War. He even made his first official run for office that year, running with the Peace and Freedom Party. As the war was going on, there was drama within the Socialist Party. 3 factions had formed that were debating on what to do moving forward, McReynolds leading the most radical faction, the Debs Caucus, which advocated for the party to remain electorally independent. However, it was also the smallest, so they would end up splitting off from the other caucuses, forming a new political party called the Socialist Party of the United States of America, or SPUSA. McReynolds becoming one of their de facto leaders, making sure the SPUSA's core philosophy was anti-authoritarian and pacifist. However, while this was going on, McReynolds was struggling with alcoholism. He would later enroll in Alcoholics Anonymous in 1974 and would soon become sober. In 1980, the party was interested in endorsing the candidacy of Barry Commoner of the Citizens Party, but plans ended up falling through, so they turned to David McReynolds to be their nominee, thus making him the first openly gay presidential candidate in U.S. history, getting them on the ballots in more states and a slight increase in support. The only one he did not get an increase in support in was Wisconsin, but that was because the last cycle, they nominated a Milwaukee mayor. McReynolds then decided to take a step back for a while and again focus on activism, mostly paying attention to foreign policy, becoming the chair of the Wars Resistors International in 1986, going on a delegation to the USSR in 1987, and in 1989, going on a delegation to Libya on behalf of Fellowship of Reconciliation. And in 1991, he would work with them again, this time in Baghdad, to negotiate with Saddam Hussein about Western hostages he had. And believe it or not, it was actually a successful trip. By 1997, David was 68 and felt that it was time for him to pass the torch, and he retired from basically all of the positions he held within his party, which may have confused him a lot when he learned that the SPUSA's youth faction was actively trying to push for him to run for president in 2000, McReynolds choosing to accept the nomination. The campaign was notable because David was partially involved with the supposed spoilage of the election in Florida, as the butterfly ballots designs had led people in Palm Beach to believe that David McReynolds was running for a separate office, and as such, 2,908 people voted for him and Al Gore, so those votes were tossed out. Afterwards, McReynolds, inspired by the draft campaign that led him to run, initiated one himself for Iowa City Councilwoman Karen Cubby to run in the 2004 election cycle. While she did not end up doing so, McReynolds ended up doing something interesting in that cycle instead, initiating a campaign against New York Senator Chuck Schumer. However, since the Socialist Party was not on the ballot in the state, he ran as the nominee of the Green Party, focusing his candidacy on the Iraq War. He wound up getting more than double what the Greens got in the last election. Afterwards, David faded in the background a bit, usually being relegated to speaking events, interviews, or just generally around if you happen to follow him on Facebook or something. However, Facebook would end up being his downfall, as he made some comments there that made a lot of members within his party and movement, particularly the younger members, raise a couple of eyebrows. First came from his response to the Michael Brown shooting.
The killing was not, in my view, justified, but the video clips of Michael Brown in his theft of minor items just before the shooting show a youth who is thuggish in how he behaved towards the storekeeper. This does not justify the shooting, but neither does it justify petty theft from small store owners.
But more recently was what he said about the Charlie Hebdo shooting.
The horror of the Islamic attack in Paris does require examining what there is about Islam which produces such shocking event. All religious systems produce violent extremes, but Judaism and Christianity have not been turning out these kinds of murder and suicide attacks for a long time. Very troubling.
Those comments were viewed as racist and Islamophobic, so the SPUSA National Committee voted to censure McReynolds. McReynolds responded by resigning from the party via a scathing letter decrying how the Socialist Party was no longer relevant in the modern day, stating,
"The failure of the Socialist Party, its tendency to substitute a kind of left rhetoric for serious analysis, is to be regretted because if we even needed a democratic socialist movement, it is today."
But he was hopeful for a better left movement that would rise. Later that year, he announced that he would be backing the Democratic primary campaign of Bernie Sanders, citing his long history of being one of the few socialists elected to Congress. McReynolds would end up dying on August 17, 2018, after he sustained a fall in his home. McReynolds is by no means one of the most prominent socialists in the United States. Heck, even in his own party, he is not that well known. And judging by the end of the story, he was not that well liked near the end. But McReynolds does have a place in history. He was the first openly gay presidential candidate, and he did lead to the creation of a newer socialist movement going forward, which, in a way, you could say contributed to the growing socialist movement that happens today. Thanks for watching this video. Be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and click that bell to notify when a future video of mine comes out. And if you're interested in more content from me, you could go to my website, follow me on Twitter, join my Discord, or consider supporting me on Patreon. Forward for the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, to the creation of the Juche ideology, etc. One of the things Kim talked about was something called 𝔖𝔦𝔩𝔢𝔬𝔲𝔢𝔱, technical, ideological, and cultural. All things would intersect with one major idea, using film to build up the Juche ideology. And in Juche 61,
Nintendo, I've been meaning to ask, what the heck are you doing on that computer? Why do you need to do that? I'm pretty sure your power is some shit, but I got no work here. Keep it up then, soldier. Ha ha ha.